Secondly, the nature of the universe, Pillow tells us, is by definition contingent, right? So it's not perhaps one of these things that doesn't need a cause. No, it's contingent. That is not having to have existed necessarily, right? It's dependent on something else for its existence. That's the nature of the universe. And therefore, it needs a cause, which leads to the alternative premise that Stein doesn't give us, right? Stein says, if everything, needs a cause, then God needs a cause. That's basically what he's saying. The argument, at least the way the Kalam argument is put together by, let's see, who's our good classical friend there?
Oh, William Lane Craig?
Yeah, William Lane Craig. Yeah. He doesn't, that's not the premise that he uses
Right.
as the argument. He says everything that begins to exist must have a cause. So that's a totally different premise. And now that's a different kind of argument, right? What Stein is telling us that the cosmological argument gives us.
Yeah.
So notice, if everything that begins to exist must have a cause, we can now say that God, the Christian God, never began to exist. The universe, we would argue then, is the second premise in the argument, began to exist. And therefore, now we have to show that premise too is indeed the case, right? And so Stein, again, I think misrepresents the argument here because of his thinking about his definition of God, right? That definition of God now has led him astray in terms of how this particular argument works. Now, I'm not going to say that this argument is foolproof and it has no problems and that kind of stuff. In fact, Bonson doesn't even support this argument. But Stein hasn't given us the best version of this argument. And I think it's based, either he deliberately didn't do it, or it's based on his misunderstanding of who the Christian God is. I think that's going on.
And then just his understanding of the universe, 1985, right? So this isn't 1930s with the solid state model. The redshift has been discovered and found. The Big Bang
background radiation has been detected. Yeah. So all of these types of things show that the universe at least began to exist.
Exactly. So this is a weird way to dunk on your opponent here.